So I have 4 different files with different exposures, and this is a technique called high dynamic range that works best when you have extreme contrast. So for example, when you're photographing indoors and you can see out a window, or perhaps at night, or with extreme contrast, high, really intense like stage lighting or something of that sort. So here is an image that is well exposed for the interior, and then progressively moving to darker and darker and darker until I get all the detail in the sky. So just kind of looking at the histograms, you can see there's nothing actually even in the farthest right quarter of the histogram. Whereas when I slowly back down, like this is probably the one that's best for exposure for the sky. Sky is blown out, but the inside's too dark. And then the inside is fairly well exposed. It's maybe a little dark on the left side of the couch here, but otherwise it would be a pretty good exposure for the inside. So in order to do high dynamic range, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the exposures that I want that have the detail for the inside and then progressively to the outside. This might be 3 frames like I'm going to grab here. It may be more frames, it may be less frames, but you don't really need to grab anything that is extremely dark without having that detail. For example, the far right one, or this extremely brighter than you would normally make an interior. So I'll grab those 3 and I'm going to right click on them and I'll get this option to do photo merge. And then I can just simply select HDR. Now, it's going to put them together in a way that looks fairly good for this. I hope that you're still seeing my entire screen here. I'm going to switch to desktop to make sure you're able to see this. So I have the ability to auto align. So ideally, you still want to be on a tripod when you're making these exposures. If you're hand holding, you'll probably get a significant either camera shake or misalignment of the photos. So it's really important to be on a tripod, but if you're not, it can auto align to some degree. And auto settings will let you, it kind of brightens it up to what should be a pretty good exposure. Now this isn't perfect, we'll still edit it further in Lightroom, but this will get you all the detail of the interior as well as the exterior. And you can go through here and there's different deghost options. And the deghost option should be for if something is moving. So for example, this tree outside, if I go to none, now I guess there really isn't much moving. So I don't see a major difference there. But you can kind of go through these options and see which one looks best for your image. I kind of prefer the none. It seems to preserve more of the kind of highlight and shadow inside the image. There's an option to create a stack, which is really for merging all of your images previous together. I'll have to show it for it to make sense, but it takes all 4 of these or all 3 of these images here, and it hides them underneath this final image. So I'll go ahead and click merge. Screen share back to just Lightroom. And you'll see how there's a number 4 here in the little corner, and that represents this is a stack of 4 images, and it's hiding the source images and only showing this final image. I'd have to go in here and still do some basic editing for the image to look really good. Typically, you're gonna have to lighten it up. So I could pull up my exposure, or I might just hit auto. Oh, nope, don't like that. All right, pull up my exposure, and then I can pull down my whites and my shadows probably. Oops, whites and highlights is what I'm trying to say, in order to get the sky, and pull up my shadows and a little bit of my blacks to get some of the detail on the inside. Now the thing that I find typically with HDR is that it can get oversaturated easily. So I'm gonna of course knock out my upping of my vibrance and saturation, and I might actually find some things and pull them down. For example, I feel like the yellow tone is getting to be a little too much, and the color in the couch here, particularly where the blue light is reflecting off of it, is a bit much. So I could maybe pull down my overall saturation to tone those down, or I could go back into my HSL and I could take my saturation down on my yellows, maybe a tad on the orange. And I would say this is kind of a, I don't know, pinkish color, so I'll pull that down a little. And I feel like that is probably better representing my image. Let me turn that whole set off and on. Oh, and actually see it making a difference there. It should be. Oh, I'm grabbing the wrong one. This one. There we go. So there's before and after. I feel like that is just a little bit more true to life, perhaps. I might have gone too far, but that seems pretty good. So I could go on and do some selective editing, dodging and burning, that sort of stuff, but that would be a way to bring back that detail. And I'm going to just undo my stack here and go back to my original image versus my HDR image. So the inside looks actually a bit brighter because I brightened the whole thing up, but it definitely draws my attention out the window as opposed to having it be just bright and really, really blown out. So that's how to HDR.